Hello, this is the BBC News with Fiona MacDonald. In the last hour, it's been announced that Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, has died. He was 91. Mikhail Gorbachev was in office from 1985 to 1991. His reforms set in motion a train of events that led to the collapse of Soviet communism and helped to end the Cold War. Unlike some of his predecessors, when pro-democracy protests swept through Eastern Europe in 1989, he did not use force. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg looks back at his legacy.
When he came to power in 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev set out to modernise the Soviet Union. By the time he left office, 6 years later, the country didn't exist. He'll be remembered by many in Russia as the leader who lost an empire, whose reforms, perestroika and glasnost, had spun chaotically out of control. And yet it was Gorbachev who gave so many in his country their first taste of freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom to criticise the Communist Party, the government.
Спасибо вам за встречу. Вам спасибо. Извините, что мы вас заставили 4 часа ждать.
Gorbachev broke the mould of ageing, reclusive Soviet leaders. He went on Western-style walkabouts, getting up close and personal with the people. Margaret Thatcher famously described him as a man the West could do business with. The American President Ronald Reagan proved that. He and Gorbachev worked together to slash their nuclear arsenals. But it's in Europe, perhaps, where Gorbachev will be remembered most fondly. Across the Eastern Bloc, millions were inspired by his call for change and used it to push for their own freedom from Moscow. One by one, communist regimes tumbled, and the Berlin Wall, the most potent symbol of Europe's Iron Curtain, came crashing down. Lilia Shevtsova is a political analyst.
It was Mikhail Gorbachev who became the terminator of the 20th century, who ended the Cold War, who ended domination of the Soviet Union over the Central and Eastern Europe. He dismantled this domination in the most willing and peaceful way. He let them go.
Still, much of what Mikhail Gorbachev changed didn't last. In today's Russia, democratic freedoms are being rolled back, and East-West confrontation has returned.
That was our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg looking back at the legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. The Ukrainian army says it's destroyed command posts and ammunition depots on the second day of its southern offensive. It said again it targeted the strategic bridges used to supply Russian troops on the west bank of the Dnipro River around Kherson. But officials in Kiev are cautioning against any expectations of a rapid advance, describing the offensive as a slow grinding down of the enemy. 8 European Union countries bordering the Baltic Sea have agreed to a 7-fold increase in offshore wind energy production by 2030. The venture has been given impetus by Russia's curtailment of gas shipments since it invaded Ukraine. Moscow is again cutting gas supplies to Europe. The energy giant Gazprom says it will fully suspend gas deliveries to the French Engie company over an alleged contract dispute. Paris called an earlier announcement about reduced deliveries a clear sign that Russia was using gas as a weapon of war. EU countries have worked to reduce their dependence on Russian gas before winter. A spokesman for the French government, Olivier Véran, said consumers might need to conserve their gas usage this winter.
You know the conditions, the risk. We see it again this morning with Gazprom reducing gas supply. Russia can cut off gas to Europe at any time. We don't know yet, but we will soon know if the winter will be particularly cold, which will consume a lot of energy. And so this imposes on us collectively to make not only a gesture for the planet, but a gesture to pass the winter in good conditions. That's to say, to be careful with consumption.
Iraq's President Barham Saleh has addressed the nation after nearly 24 hours of violence that's left dozens dead and hundreds injured in the capital Baghdad. Mr. Saleh said although Iraq's political crisis was not over, a halt to the violence was essential. BBC News.